This one's wife. They're out to get me. Paranoia. As the saying goes, just because you're paranoid, it doesn't mean they're not out to get you. I've explained separately how paranoia serves a purpose to the narcissist to drive the narcissist through the auspices of suspicion, to assert control and to draw fuel. But paranoia is not the preserve of just the narcissist. Other people are affected by it. And here we have an excellent example of why Harry persists in making an arse of himself and why it was so easy for this one's wife to manipulate the Prince of Pink Pancakes. Word just in yesterday from Prince Harry's people. They say the prince thoroughly enjoyed his recent visit to the United Kingdom, where he had tea with the king, and felt warmly received. The prince says, "I very much look forward to visiting in the future, on any terms, whenever others deem it appropriate." No, that's not what he said. The clue is, there's not a whiff of, "I'm doing my bit to reconcile, and they're not doing theirs, and my conscience is clear, so it's all on them anyway." What the would-be returning prodigal son is understood to have actually said was, "The men in grey suits are sabotaging my reunion with my father." Not just a far from useful intervention, but for many reasons precisely the wrong thing to say at this time. Harry still wants to blame anyone but himself for his exit from the royal family. This is why he makes himself look like a first-class clown, and why it has become so easy for him to get on board with this one's wife, because she fails to accept any blame for different reasons, but the outcome is similar. And therefore, what she has done, as I've explained in a separate video about their awful shared fantasy, has created this idea that neither of them are responsible for the problems that exist. It's all as a consequence of the racist hatred and the colonial misogynism of other people. That the reason things don't succeed is because the royal family are briefing against them. The reason that things don't get off the ground is a consequence of the rabid haters out there. That the reason the reconciliation has not come about isn't because King Charles looks at his son and thinks, "You're not showing any remorse for your behaviour and you still don't get it," nor because of the entitlement being shown by Harry and this one's wife, nor because the royal family looks at it and says, "We simply can't trust you." No. Harry, rather than realising it's his conduct and that of his wife that has caused this rift in the first place, he says it's the men in grey suits who are sabotaging the reunion. 5 years on from taking his freedom flight, and do you remember that video that they took of themselves on the private jet, fleeing the country that had supposedly incarcerated them? They were whispering at the camera like excited defectors, and he still hasn't got the message that his excommunication by the royal family was entirely his choice. He's got the message that he can't keep trashing his closest family, all of whom are more popular than him, including William in America. But for Harry, that means that there's a vacancy for who is the number one villain, an obstacle to his happiness. Right, okay, I can't keep blaming my family, so who can I blame now? Go and look in the mirror, Harry. There's the villain. No, that won't happen. Instead, he's got to try and find somebody else to blame. You see, it can't be the result of his own actions that his brother and sister-in-law, Stuffy Kate, who winces when she has to share her lip gloss, and stepmother the Queen, dangerous and self-interested, are wary of trusting him again. No, it can't be the result of that. Harry doesn't get that there's more on people's minds than being upstaged by this one's wife's radiance. He thinks that's what's the root of the problem, that they all felt threatened by this one's wife, and he doesn't understand, because he's self-absorbed and stupid, that he can't see why, when his trip to the UK a couple of weeks ago was such a success, the royal family aren't in full reconciliation mode. In his tiny walnut-like mind, he's thinking, it was such a success. Why aren't they ringing me up to get things moving so that we can get back in again? Why aren't they organising emergency summits to discuss how they can get their most valuable asset, good old Prince of Pink Pancakes, back on the team? Accordingly, what he does is he points the finger at the staff, the royal household aides, the people his mother Diana first christened the men in grey suits. Harry, once again, bringing up his mother, using the phrase that his mother used, is incendiary. I'm still dealing with the forces of darkness that ultimately killed my mother, and is delusional. Diana was a breath of fresh air in a stuffy, dated institution who shook up the etiquette and expectations of the time. But Harry thinks that's what he's done by leaving and getting a deal with Netflix. He thinks he shook things up. In his mind, aided and abetted by this one's wife, he was on a path to being something like his mother in her finest hours, and then he wasn't because he chose to abandon his birthright. And although we were told by them, the gruesome twosome, back in 2020, that there are other ways to serve, those turn out to be actual same ways, slimmed down dramatically, plus a lot of kissing and telling and documentaries about polo. Once again, entitlement, no perspective. These men in grey suits are ultimately doing his father's bidding. When they say, for example, the King's diary is full on the day that Harry wants to pop in, then that's done with the King's approval, because he's busy and presumably fed up of falling into line whenever Harry decides to launch a re-entry mission. But Harry would rather blame a shadowy character, played by Pip Torrens, with a leather binder and highly polished brogues for coming between him and his father, than take any actual responsibility himself. There's only one person who came between him and the King, with some considerable help from his wife, and that person's got ginger hair and a huge chip on his shoulder. The royal household are likely to be team damage limitation, and Harry is viewed as the damage. They're probably about as enthusiastic about a Harry rehabilitation plan in the future as they are about the prospect of negotiating the backdoor comings and goings of the Yorks at Christmas. They probably have a variety of different names for Harry and this one's wife, who they will regard with disdain, but they're not the people that are getting in the way. Harry and this one's wife got in the way. She can't see it because her narcissism blinds it, and he can't see it because he's often been used to having his own way and he's self-absorbed, and he listens to what his wife tells him, that it's not us, Harry, it's them. He gets this on a daily basis because that's her default setting. It's not us, Harry, that's the problem. It's them. They've got it in for us. They've got it in for you. It's the men in grey suits. They're out to get you. Oh, yeah, you're absolutely right, my little Westphalian pumpernickel. As always, as ever. And so this dimwit, demonstrating why it was so easy to ensnare him in the first place, continues not to get it. And this time he's bleating again, whining, by saying, it's the men in grey suits that are out to get me. Rather than realising the reason it's not happening, Harry, is because of the way that you and your wife have behaved, but you are singularly incapable of recognising that. Her because of her narcissism, and you because you're self-absorbed and stupid. And thus, rather than realise what is actually getting in the way, he makes it worse by whinging and complaining about another villain, the paranoia of the Prince of Pink Pancakes. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.